most women that I talk to go through this. This is something very common, where there is a period in your relationship where it feels dead. It feels like it's gone somewhere, and you remember, and all you have is this distant memory of what it once was. And it's so hard in those moments. But I think that the Lord can use all of it. I don't think any of it is ever wasted.
Today on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, we're going to be exploring some simple ways that you can really revolutionize your relationship with your spouse. I'm John Fuller, and we're so glad you've joined us.
You know, the longer I've been married, the more I realize that it's not the big things that destroy marriage. Those things do, whether it's addiction, infidelity, those big things that can happen. But over time, all the little things can add up to drifting apart and no longer being in love with each other. So today we want to cover those A to Z ideas, and it gives us a simple framework with our guests to kind of better understand what to think about when you're in that moment with your spouse and what you need to do to preserve and grow and deepen your love in your marriage.
And Jason and Tori Benham are back with us today, and they've developed a list of 30 different, simple, effective ideas that couples can use to strengthen their relationship. And these are things you can start doing today.
Jason and Tori, welcome back. It's good to finish the alphabet with you.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Well, it is fun. Let's start with Z. Just to go right to the most difficult of all letters. What'd you come up with Z?
Well, I remember looking at that and I thought, well, where am I going to get Z? And I looked up the word, because I was looking for something that involved humor, and I looked up the word zanyism.
Okay.
So like zany. And it's all about humor. And I started talking to Tori, and I was like, one of the things that has helped us a lot in marriage, specifically when it comes to conflict, is having a little bit of a sense of humor.
So true.
And
let me test that. Yeah. Tori, is that true?
It is absolutely true.
Did you appreciate those funny jokes right at the heat of battle with your hubby? Timing's everything.
Timing is everything, but we have learned that you don't have to take yourself so serious. And the biggest problem that we ran into at the beginning of our relationship was taking things too seriously, especially for me. I just took things really seriously. And then as we began to laugh about things, and then we kind of, have our own little sense of humor we have like lines from movies that we now break the ice with. When things get a little bit heated, we have our little lines that we're like, you know what, it's really not that big of a deal. And we can just make fun of each other.
That's good.
But it is funny though, little things like that. And we always encourage couples, hey, find a show that you can watch together that makes you laugh. Like find a comedian that makes you laugh together, or some movies.
That's good.
And pick a few of those lines.
Yeah.
And then at any moment when things get a little heated, maybe pull out a line or two, and then just be, have a good laugh with each other. It helps a lot in marriage.
Yeah, it's kind of just a reminder. It's okay for us to laugh. One of the ones that I think about all the time is the one from Night at the Museum. Have you guys watched Night at the Museum? And there's the guy Brundon, and there's a scene with him, and it's just the funniest scene. And at one point, he looks at who's the actor?
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, and he says, "And you know what? Be nice to people." And we say that to each other all the time. Like things are like, we're not being that real nice, and things are getting like a little heated. We're like, you know what? Be nice to people.
Okay, we got Z. Now M, moving toward your mate. When you're having a disagreement, I know folks are going to, send us a note saying, I never argue with that is awesome. Yeah. Way to go.
Good for you.
Most of us will have some disagreements. And the most difficult time to move toward your mate is at the moment of disagreement. That's like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you do that emotionally when you're kind of at odds with each other?
Here's the crazy thing. Dr. John Gottman, foremost researcher on all things marriage, he said that out of 50 years of studying marriages, he said the ones that are the most healthy are the ones where when conflict happens, people move toward their mate. And not just conflict. If I reach out to Tori and I'm like going to go grab her hand, she responds positively to that and, grabs my hand. If I put my arm around her, she kind of snuggles up into my arm. So when I'm moving toward her, she moves toward me. The difficult part is when you're at odds with each other. And that's why even science has come out now, research has come out now that shows that like 20 seconds of physical touch, like just a hug, can reset things emotionally for you. So when things get a little heated, sometimes Tori and I will reach out, we'll kind of grab hands, hold hands a little bit, or we might force a hug in that moment. and you're moving toward your mate, it really does reset things, don't you?
Yeah.
I love the forced hug.
Yes,
I'm just laughing
forced
at that.
hug. Yeah. Years ago, I was certified as an emotional intelligence coach, and I learned so much during that season of just self-awareness. The first quadrant of emotional intelligence is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned about myself is that I move away from Jason in conflict. And that was very eye-opening to me because I wasn't aware of it. I
Really?
wasn't able to.
I would think
to
that's normal
Right.
for all of us. That's the normal reaction. Like, okay, I'm going to a different room.
Yes.
I'm laying
She-
on the opposite side of
She
the bed, facing
really
away
moved
from
away
you.
from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
All right.
It was like,
So
get
you-
away.
But for me, I wasn't even self-aware. I wasn't aware enough to know that it was happening, that every time there was a conflict, my initial reaction was to move away, to get quiet, to distance myself. And as I began to learn, oh my goodness, this is not working for our relationship, I began to learn how to move into that next quadrant of emotional intelligence, which is self-management. So now that I know that I'm doing this, what can I do about it? And so I began to practice, doing the very opposite of the thing that I want to do in that moment, which is to pull away, to distance myself, to get quiet, kind of cold shoulder him, and to actually take a step in the other direction and to move towards him, do something that's uncomfortable, right? And this is a part of marriage that's so important, that we grow in flexibility, right? Like, it is not like, for me, that I was very inflexible in that area. And so I had to do what we do when we're inflexible physically, and I had to lean in and stretch and do something uncomfortable to grow in flexibility. And so that really was a practice that I began to do years ago, and it was really helpful for our relationship.
It's not to say, though, that in the moment of battle, you can't pull away just for 20 minutes
Right.
or whatever, because,
It might be helpful.
flooding is a
Yes,
thing.
yeah, right.
Flooding is a thing, and the 20-minute rule is it takes sometimes 20 minutes of, I'm going to go in
Chill time.
Yeah.
chill, and then come back together. The idea is don't stay away.
Right.
Come back together and move toward each other even when you don't want to.
I appreciate that clarification because I don't think I'm alone in this. There was a moment where we were having some words and I wanted to fix the problem. And so I moved in to hug her and she said, not now.
Yeah.
And that was good emotional intelligence of
Yes.
her own well-being.
Yes.
And it set a boundary. And I was
Yes.
kind of wounded. I'm like, can't we just hug and get over this?
Yes.
So there has to be space. And I like
Yes.
the 20-minute rule.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good because sometimes we guys want to have a simple fix.
My
Oh,
personality is we can knock that down to 10. Come on, we
Yes.
can get to 10. Let's
Yes.
just do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
How
Chill
does
out-
Jean
chill out
relate?
quicker.
Does she
No,
respond?
she's
pretty
good. She's really good. She's very calm. I'm the one usually going, what?
What's going on?
Let me ask you, in terms of love language, we've had Gary Chapman here. We're all
he's awesome.
prepared in the love language. Physical touch is one, and that's kind of maybe not your language, Tori, but you were expressing it if you moved in.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than pulling back.
Yes.
The one that you do possess that we know about is really the idea of quality time.
Yes. Yeah.
So how did that work when you're going well and doing well as a
Yeah.
couple? It's probably easy, but when it's a little harder,
Yes.
how do you get quality time with Jason?
Well, when Jason and I, when we first got married, that was my primary love language, and Jason's was not. And so we talked about it, and Jason became aware of that love language, and I became aware of his. And you can tell him the story of how the Lord really changed your love language through you pursuing me through mine.
Yeah, and it's crazy because Dr. Gary Chapman, he's a hero of ours.
Oh, yeah.
We love him. My primary love language when we first got married, physical touch, words of affirmation, which is most of the guys out there. Bottom of my list was quality time and gifts. But I tell couples all the time that, and Gary Thomas, I think, is the one that coined this. God is not just your father, he's your father-in-law. And can you imagine how much your father-in-law is going to help you when he sees you loving his son or daughter in a way that might not be your natural way? So I knew hers was quality time. So for 20 plus years, I was spending quality time with her, even in those times where I didn't want to. Well, do you know, I took that test again because Dr. Chapman came up with it online. So I'm 24 years into marriage, and I took that test again. You want to know what my number one love language was? Quality time.
Wow.
That my father-in-law, God, transformed my heart. And he can do that to anybody. There are probably some people listening right now that think, I'll never be that. I can't do that for my husband or my wife or whatever. Do it. And when, the essential element of love is sacrifice. And when you sacrifice, God, your father, who is also your father-in-law, will bring the transformation that's needed in your heart and your mind and your life, and he'll transform your relationship.
So how did you move toward physical touch?
Okay, this is really interesting.
Yeah, explain that one.
I feel like it's so important that you value each love language, right? That you have to be able to see each of them and see value in each of them. And I remember a time where I began to learn the value of physical touch. I was listening to a podcast on neuroscience, and they were talking about how it regulates the body, how it's so important to have physical touch, and that when you're holding your spouse's hand, that your body is actually being regulated. And sometimes when you're highly anxious and you just hold somebody's hand or you give them a 20-second hug, it actually regulates your nervous system. And so I actually began to value that love language, the love language of physical touch, which I didn't really value before. I thought it was stupid. I felt like it was always leading in one direction, that I didn't want to go all the time, right? Like I didn't really value it. But as I began to value it and to reach for Jason and to think, this is really good for me. Oh, wow, I actually do feel my body regulating. And I actually now have become a physical touch girl as well, because I just kind of leaned into something that I didn't think that I liked, and
that is good
began
and
to
healthy,
value it.
Hey, let me ask you, D for dominion. Dominion seems like such a King James word.
Yes.
I mean,
It's a beautiful
dominion.
word.
It feels even like we shouldn't say that word.
Yeah.
It's the D word. Dominion. What does it mean?
Well, dominion was our very first blessing that God gave to Adam and Eve in the garden. It's have dominion over the garden. And then he's be fruitful and multiply, right? So dominion is taking authority for the place where God has put you. And you need to have authority in your marriage. As husbands, our relationships with God is tied to our relationship with our wife. We see that in the New Testament, where God's like, I'm not even listening to your prayers because of the way that you're treating the wife of your youth. So God is like, you need to have dominion in every area of your life. And the primary one is right there with God's daughter. The primary is right there with God's son. And so that's what we're talking about, dominion. Responsibility and authority go hand in hand.
Yeah.
That, authority is the right to use power. And the key to keeping your authority is staying in the place of your responsibility. Where was Adam when Eve was conversing with the serpent? He was standing right next to her because she ate the fruit and turned and gave it to him. Well, he was not exercising dominion in that moment. He should have had dominion in the relationship and dominion over the snake, stepped in front and goes, hey, when I named you, you didn't talk. Why are you talking to her? If you're going to talk to her, you're going to come through me first, right? But he didn't exercise dominion, and therefore he lost his authority. So that's what we're talking about for dominion. Take dominion in your relationship.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's directive.
Yeah, this is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, and today our guests are Tori and Jason Benham, and we're talking about their great little book, A to Z Marriage, 30 Days to Relational Transformation. Thank you for joining us, and if you find this content meaningful, hit that subscribe button so we can keep growing and improving together. And continuing this thought, Jason, you had a story about playing baseball that related to this that I thought was kind of interesting.
Who would have thunk that? The baseball
right,
player.
Right. I remember being 8 years old, and I looked on the schedule, and we had to play, and we just went by colors back then. We didn't have like cool names, I'm playing baseball in Little League, and we had to play the red team. And on the red team was a guy named Brent Murphy. And Brent Murphy was the most feared pitcher in all of the world.
He had a 75-mile-an-hour softball.
No, he threw 1,000 miles an hour. And the ball was on fire when he threw it.
Smoking.
And nobody wanted to hit against him. And I was so scared. And when we got to the field, I saw him out there warming up, and my heart was just pounding. And I was like the third hole hitter. I was a good hitter. And the first guy gets up, he strikes out. Next guy is up, and I'm on deck, and my heart is pounding. And I'm just like, this is not going to work. So I faked a sickness. I walked over to my coach at third base, and I was like, I think my stomach is hurting. I think I'm sick. And he goes, oh, by all means, go sit down. And then I go and so I don't get to hit. And I go and I sit down on the bench and I look over at my dad, and my dad knows exactly what I did. I wimped out. I didn't take dominion in that moment. And I became a spectator in a game I was made to play. You know what? I think there are a lot of spouses that are spectators in a game that they should be playing. You got to get out there on the field. And you know what? Fear is going to present itself. But courage isn't a thing if fear doesn't first show up. You can't be courageous if fear doesn't show up. So you got to face your fear, whatever that is. If you got to go deep into your history and talk about some things you hadn't talked with your spouse about, if you've got to move forward toward your spouse when you don't want to, face those fears. And then ultimately, you'll not find yourself spectating, but you'll actually be in the game playing, and you can play to win.
Yeah. I give you kudos for saying that.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, okay, that's gutsy for a guy to say I wimped out. Because if we were a little younger, I'd be all over you. Like, what are you talking about? But it's true. It's a good analogy for how we do that emotionally as well.
Said from the guy who can't even throw a fastball anymore.
Yeah, thanks.
He had rotator cuff surgery twice.
Hey, I'm coming back.
He's becoming a southpaw. You didn't know
watch
that. He's
out.
been practicing lefty.
Tori, you have to represent all women here at the table because you are the woman at the table.
Okay.
Yeah, you are.
But when it comes to affection, now we're going to move a little bit in the other direction or in a further direction of physical touch. But when we're talking about affection, you also mentioned that instead of waiting for the right mood, we've got to be available, both husband and wife. The shoe's sometimes on the other foot with this, so I don't want to make that gender stereotype, but most often it's the man who is thinking affection a little more deeply.
Right.
But speak to that issue of being available both ways, husband and wife being able to send the signal of affection is desired.
Yes.
How do we get into a healthier place? I'm telling you, and people watching and listening know this. This is like the number one issue in marriage, negotiating physical intimacy.
Wow.
It's just, it becomes a problem for
Yeah.
some reason. I think the enemy of our soul works incredible mischief in this area.
I totally can attest to that. I think it's a mindset. I think that our mindset has to be right. And I think that sometimes, I think for women, I know for myself that I kind of grew up thinking that affection and intimacy and to be blunt, sex was for the man. And I didn't see it as something that was a blessing to me. And so that had to change. That mindset had to change. That God created intimacy. He created affection for me and for Jason. And as I began to see the blessing of it and to receive the gift that it was for me, I was able to give it in a better, in a more healthy way. But I think it was definitely a mindset. And I also think that as women, we go through seasons of childbearing and where we are, touched out. I call it touched out, where kids are touching and clawing. And, I have a picture of one of our kids, their hand is under the bathroom door. I said, I can't escape, right? Like, you can't escape. And so I think there are seasons of that where you start to devalue the intimacy and the things that overwhelm you. And I think that, and I think that for me, I had to get to a place where it's like, okay, my mindset is getting a little bit off here. I'm not seeing it as a blessing. I'm not seeing it as a good thing. And then to be able to, I think that we also, women need time to do that, to get into the right mindset, that it can't just be expected that we can just drop everything. Like, I think a man's brain is a little bit more compartmentalized, and things are kind of in boxes, and he can go from this to this in 0.5 seconds. Whereas a woman, everything's a little bit more connected. It takes us a little bit more time to get there. So men, if they can be patient with us, for us to make that transfer and for us to get into the mindset that we need to be
I've
in.
heard Tori counsel a lot of women during this time where she's like, okay, you got to change your mindset, and then you need some time to yourself. And with that time, what you need to be focusing on is appreciation for your husband.
Yeah, that's
Actually
so true.
start appreciating him. Like, notice the things that he does.
Because that's the doorway for a woman.
Yes.
It's not like men. I mean, like men, it's purely the physical thing. And I don't mean to make it simplistic and you send me a note and, all that. But realistically, generally, that's it. Women need a different type of framework to say, okay, this helps me to get there.
Yes.
And that's, connection.
Yes.
And emotional attachment.
Yes.
And you're blowing our mind. Like, what? What?
Yeah.
How does that connect with that?
And a guy,
but it does.
And we need to understand that for a woman and a husband, it's not wrong for her to talk about rewarding her husband if he can help her get to that place.
Yeah.
For her to say, hey, listen, if you can actually like vacuum the floor and then get all the kids ready for bed, give me some time, and then later tonight. Like, that's not manipulation. That's motivation.
Yeah.
You're going to find him very motivated to do those things. And that is a very good and healthy. I mean, God is a rewarder of us. It talks all throughout Scripture how he rewards.
Well, and the other thing, like you guys say, be out there and use it humorously. I mean,
Right.
you know, identify it, have
Yes.
fun with it.
Yeah,
You know, that,
exactly.
hey, I'm going to be vacuuming tonight.
Yes.
So, and you could
Got
say,
any more
well,
chores
it's going
for
to
me?
take dishes and laundry on top of it, or
Yes,
whatever it might
yes,
be.
yeah.
Let's move into K, kill the crazy with a
Yes.
K, crazy with a K.
That's right.
Speak to kill the crazy. What is the crazy and how do we kill it?
What I'm talking about is if you know that you do something that annoys your spouse, stop it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like what
Dagger through the heart right there.
Why do we
Okay.
need to go any further on this?
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this is just who I am. If you know that it's something that's really bothersome to your spouse, then quit.
Give me an example.
Bad breath.
Well, how do you quit that?
Well, you chew gum.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
like if you're
Do you have
in
one
close
that's a little more
proximity.
manageable?
Yeah. But whatever it is, using the restroom and the seat always, stays up.
Okay, I'm doing really well at that one.
Okay,
Good
it's
job.
like, okay, you're
I would
done.
get a
You're a
gold
guy.
star for
I
that.
tell you
Yes.
what, do her a favor and put the seat down.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's little things.
Yeah.
But Tori, that communicates I see you, I care about you. I
It
mean, it
does.
sounds
It
silly,
absolutely
and that's
does.
like a minor
Yes.
example.
Yes,
but, you
it
know,
does.
it's-
It communicates, I care, I see you, I'm listening. I love the quote that we have for this chapter, and it's, it says, some people don't know they're being annoying, which is even more annoying. And that is so true, right?
right.
Like the awareness is so important. Some people, you don't know you're being annoying, which makes it even more annoying. So I think the awareness of bringing awareness to it, it's like, oh, this really drives him crazy. Maybe there's something I can do about this.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other easy letter of the alphabet, Q. So we've covered
Q.
X and Z and Q. Quitting.
Quitting.
Yeah.
Quit quitting.
So-
Quitting.
Is it obvious, or what's the
It is
substance
very
around
obvious,
it?
but I think that it says a lot about your commitment. I mean, there does come a point where your emotions aren't lining up with what you want them to. Maybe you said the wrong thing and your spouse, and it is just, there's nothing that you can do in that moment to make things better except refuse to quit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use the D word, we're just not going to quit. That's it. I'm just going to continue moving forward. And yeah, we might need some space. We might need some of that. But I'm not quitting on you, and I know you're not quitting on me. And once you get to that point, I'm telling you, just that brings security in a relationship. It's
Let
like,
me back the truck up a little bit, though, because I think it's important for people listening and viewing where they may be, the well is dry. That's where they're at.
Yeah.
They can't imagine that this well will ever fill with fresh water again, meaning
Right.
the love in their relationship. Speak to that person in that moment where, okay, they're just realizing, I don't know that we have enough together to continue. Now, as Christians, I know you guys are jumping out going, what are you talking about? I'm just trying to position this to say that couples, both in the church and outside the church, will feel like the well is dry. And I've come to the end of my rope, and there's nothing there incentivizing me to stick with it. How do we need to look at that differently in that moment?
I love that question because I see it all through Scripture, where one of the first things that they would do when they went into a new place was to dig a well. It's like you have to have a well. And then when we see Jesus, when he announced essentially that he is the Messiah, the Son of God, the first person, it's to a woman that he meets at a well. You have to tap into that well. You have to tap into the source. You have to give God the credit that he is powerful enough to transform anything. He brings dead things to life. He brings dead things to life. You need to claim that over yourself, and you need to claim that over your spouse and over your relationship. And you bring God, the author of life, in. I mean, you go even look in the book of Ezekiel, where God told him to prophesy to the bones. These were dead bones.
Dry bones.
Yeah, they were completely dried, which means they've been dead for a long time. And he prophesied to them, and they woke up and they started rattling. And then he's like, now prophesy to the breath. He breathes life into those bones, and then they arose a great army. A great army, they're on mission. An army has a mission. And I think oftentimes when you're at the bottom of your rope and you feel like the well is dry, oftentimes it's because you guys have lost your sense of mission as a couple. And it's like, why did God put us together in the first place? Because it's certainly not to sit here and argue back and forth. And you know what? The more you focus on trying to get along, the more you're probably going to start arguing. What you need to do is stop focusing on you, stop focusing on your relationship, and get out there and start focusing on helping other people. And you embrace each other's strengths and even your weaknesses to be able to do that. Watch how the Lord comes in and rewards you. And now all of a sudden that well is not dry, it's overflowing.
Tori, in that regard, you mentioned in this section of not quitting the marital vows and the importance of that. What do you want to remind us about that?
I think that hopelessness is such a killer in marriage. I think that that's something that I recognize probably midway into our marriage. I remember there being a season where I was feeling just kind of low. Like, I think it was during the winter season, and I just was feeling just not myself and some anxiety. And I was just going to the Lord, and I was like, and I was feeling it in my relationship, but I was also feeling it in every area of my life, just kind of a down season. And I remember asking the Lord, I need you to speak to me. Like, what's going on inside of me that I am struggling so much? And the Lord gave me a dream, and in the dream, it was the most like hopeless situation. It wouldn't even make sense to you if I told you the dream, but it was very hopeless. And I woke up, and I looked at the clock, and I still thought that this thing had happened, and then I realized it was a dream, and that it wasn't real. And in that moment, this like overwhelming sense of hopelessness dropped, because it was just a dream. It was just a nightmare, and I felt hope come over my body, and I just felt like this breath of fresh air. And I felt like the Lord said, this is what's happening in your life. You are living in hopelessness. You are seeing everything through this lens of hopelessness, even in the most silly ways. Like that day, I remember 3 different people asked me to do something, and I had to say no, and I'm a people pleaser. And I had plans that day, and I couldn't help these 3 people that I love so much, but I had other plans and other commitments, so I had to say no to them. Something that's the worst thing for a people pleaser to have to say is no. And I felt that weight of hopelessness. And the Lord said, do you see, like, this is how you're operating. You're operating in this weight of hopelessness, and it's infiltrating into every area of your life, including your marriage.
Yeah.
And so I began to just really focus in on that. Like, how am I living a life of hopelessness? And some of those ways were the ways I was thinking about Jason. Some of the ways were the ways I was even thinking about my own kids. Some of the conversations we'd have about our kids, they were hopeless. It was like, they don't do this. And did you know he did this again? And she talked, it's like this.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's like this attitude. It's this attitude, like that doomsday attitude. And I remember the Lord just really speaking to my heart in that season that I am operating out of a spirit of hopelessness. And I began to really turn that around. And I began to breathe life into my relationship. I began to look for good in everybody. I began to look for the good in Jason. I began to talk about the good I was seeing in my kids to Jason, to the people around me. And I began to just kind of have that victory mindset. We talk about a victory mindset in our book, Beauty in Battle, of, if we are one with Christ, we're on the winning team. In the end, we win. So let's live like we win. Let's not live like we're victims of hopelessness.
Can I put a bow on that real quick? Because trust is a choice. Hope is a feeling. Trust is the choice we make when we're going to trust God no matter what. Hope is the feeling that follows. I think a lot of people don't have hope because they've never truly made the choice to trust. So make the choice where you are in your relationship, wherever it is, make that choice that you're going to stick with it, that you're going to trust God as your father and God as your father-in-law. And in time, that feeling's going to follow, the feeling of hope.
Yeah.
Some great insight today on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. We're talking with Tori and Jason Benham, and we're covering some of the content of their book, which is small but so dense and so full of great insights. Marriage A to Z, 30 Days to Relational Transformation. Thank you for joining us for this great content, and if it's resonating with you, please subscribe so you can keep watching further editions in the future.
In mentioning that quit in this part of the book, you also talk about perhaps it's not going to be divorce, it's going to be apathy. So committed Christian couples, they may land there, but the marriage is nearly dead. That's what you mean by the apathy. Yeah. How do we avoid that, not to just be business partners and apathetic?
I think the first we have to recognize that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And if you're feeling indifferent toward your spouse, you need to go to your father-in-law. I'm going to keep bringing it back.
Yeah,
You need to go to God and ask him to reunite and reignite that passion in your heart. He did it for me 5 years into marriage, where that love that was once, on fire and just filled with fervency just began to dissipate. And I was focusing on building a business and doing all sorts of stuff, praying to the Lord about my business, and God was really blessing it. Then one morning I was up praying, and I felt like the Lord said to me, why don't you pray as hard about your marriage as you do your business? And I was convicted about that. So I started praying, like, okay, Lord, help me and Tori, let's go. And I just felt a sense of deep conviction that I was not as fully in love with her as I once was. And I felt like the Lord was kind of showing me, if I have the ability to get you to a 10 in marriage on a scale of 1 to 10, why would you settle for a 5 or a 6? Why even settle for an 8 if you can get to a 10? And I felt like that was something that I needed to pray into. And so every morning I got down on my knees about 5:30 in the morning beside our bed, and I would lay my hands on Tori. Now, I said this in our last program, but I got to reiterate. I made sure to leave it above the shoulders. I didn't want her to think I was making an early morning move or anything like that. So I would place my hands on her and pray that God would reignite my passion for her. And he did it. Revelation 2. Remember you've lost your first love, where he was talking to the church in Ephesus. And I felt like the Lord was like, you stop pursuing her. You're now pursuing a career. I'm like, well, what do I do? It's funny how before you get married, you know how to pursue your spouse, but then after you get married, you kind of forget how.
Yeah.
But the Revelation 2 had the answer. Remember, he tells them, remember how far you've fallen. Repent and redo the things you did at first. Remember, repent, redo. And in that moment, I started to remember how much I loved Tori and all the times. And then even that day and for the remaining few weeks, I started listening to our old songs that we used to listen to together. And it started kind of drumming up emotions in me. I repented for having a marriage that was hovering around a 5 or a 6 rather than a 10. And I started to redo the things we did at first that caused us to fall in love. Writing notes, dancing together to slow country music in the kitchen, a little Garth Brooks, maybe a little George Strait.
You got the soundtracks ready.
Uh-huh.
And my heart started to go in that direction. So I would say when it feels dead, you need to remember, you need to repent, you need to redo the things that you did at first, and then you watch how God will transform you.
No, that is really good, and it's a good awakening when a husband can do that. And I'll put it in that context. But Tori, let me speak to you again. The woman that's going, I've kind of done everything I can do. And he's like, is it time for the spiritual defibrillator? Because he's not responsive, and he's the kind of guy that might say, well, I love you. I told you I love you when we got married. Do I need to tell you again? That attitude.
Yes. Yeah.
And speak to that woman and with that woman in our little dialogue here. If she's in that spot, what can she do? She feels like it's not working.
Yeah.
Help me.
Well, I was that woman. I remember very much being that woman. And Jason, like Jason was telling with the story, is that he had pursued me so much in our dating years, but then we got married and he started this business, and he really, all of his attention went to the business. All of his focus went to that business. And I remember being in the bathroom on the floor crying many, many nights. Just, God, please, turn his heart back to me, help him to cherish me again. And I remember the Lord getting me to a place where he wanted me to have my full dependency on him. And I remember just asking the Lord, asking him, begging him, just turn Jason's heart towards me. And then he began to show me how to turn my face towards him, towards God, because my expectations and my desires were all wrapped up in the way that Jason was treating me, in the way that Jason was responding to me. And so the Lord had to do something inside of me to where my full reliance was on him, and that my needs were met through him. And he began to do that as I began to surrender that to him. And I never stopped asking. I continued to ask God to change Jason's heart towards me. But I surrendered a part of my heart that just longed so much for Jason to meet my needs, and I gave it to the Lord and I let him to start meeting those needs. And then in time, the Lord started using Jason to meet those needs, but I knew who it was. I knew who the source was, and it wasn't Jason. I knew my source was God himself, and that he was now using Jason to meet those needs. But I think that, most women that I talk to go through this. Like, this is something very common, where there is a period in your relationship where it feels dead. It feels like it's gone somewhere, and you remember, and all you have is this distant memory of what it once was. And it's so hard in those moments. But I think that the Lord can use all of it. I don't think any of it is ever wasted.
You know, the two common themes I've heard from you during the time we've been talking these last couple of days is really giving it to the Lord, turning toward the Lord, but then adjusting your mindset. You've said that probably 10 times.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It seems like it would be so easy and so rational and smart.
Yes.
To do something like that. Why is it so hard?
I know.
It is like a gutter we're in, and we just can't emotionally get out of that. We feel like we're saying the right things, but we're not truly believing them deep down.
Yes.
So, you got to make that effort. You got to make that connection. Turn to the Lord.
Yes.
And then ask him to engage in the situation.
Yes.
And begin to do the things that only you can control.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of them is not your husband.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you can't control him, and us husbands can't control our wives.
Yeah. Our thoughts are so, they're tricky. Like we talk about in Beauty and Battle, the neuroscience behind our thoughts. Like the way that we think, the thoughts that we think over and over again, they create neural pathways in our minds, and it gets us on a path that we continue on. And so if you have a thought and then you think it again the next day, that groove, neuroscience actually shows this. There's a groove in your head that gets deeper and deeper. It gets more easily accessible the next time.
So when you say there's a hole in your head, it's true?
It's actually true. It's actually true. Yes. But the really good news is that we can rewire our thoughts. We can rewire our brain. And it takes effort. It takes recognizing at what foot of the path that we're at, right? It takes a lot of work, but it is 100% doable. For me, like I had these thoughts of Jason that were not moving me towards him. They were actually moving me away from him. They were making me mad at him. The thoughts that I was thinking of him were not leading me to a path that I wanted to be on. It ultimately was not leading to connection. It was ultimately leading to division in our marriage. And so when I began to recognize, wait a minute, these thoughts that I'm thinking, they're not leading me where I want to go. So I better start rethinking some of these things.
Sounds simple, but hard to do.
So hard to do.
Yeah.
And so when I would get to the foot of that path and I would recognize, I know what's going on here. I am at the foot of this path, and it's so easy to go down this path, but I know where it's going, and that's not where I want to go. So I'm not going to think that thought. I'm going to think about things that are good and whole. What's that verse? Think about things that are good and true and lovely and of good report. And so you have to transform your thinking. You have to change your mind. You have to change your mindset. But you really have to start by knowing where you want to go. Right. Like for me, it was like, it's so easy to get on this path, but now I know where it's going. So I'm not going to not going to go there.
So true. Let's end with P, which you say is practice presence. You have a powerful story about your mom who died of lung cancer in 2017, I believe. How did that intersect with presence?
My mom was the most fully present woman that you would ever meet. And what we tell couples is the greatest present that you can give to your spouse is your presence. And it works with family too. And my mom, she came down with pulmonary fibrosis, which is a scarring of the lungs.
Very difficult.
And in her final days, they send in the palliative nurses and all of that, and basically they're just trying to give her comfort measures so that she can pass peacefully, because there was nothing that we could do, and she was only 68 years old. And they came in and offered her morphine, and at this point, she was really having a hard time breathing. Her oxygen levels were so low. It was like she was walking on a treadmill trying to breathe through a straw, and we were watching her in pain. She was a nurse though, and so she knew that once you start administering the morphine, then you can fall asleep and just pass away that way. And we're all like, please do that. That's what we want you to do. And she said no, and she was able to choke out. She's like, no, I want to be present. I want to be there with all of us. And, we had her for another 4 days.
Wow.
And all of us would gather around and sing worship, and then she would open her eyes every now and then. You'd see a little tear come out of her. Like she was there with us. And then on the last night, it was my little daughter, Allie, who was our oldest daughter, and she stayed with my mom that night, and I was up there with her all night, and I slept on the floor, and Allie was sleeping right next to her, and my mom was having a hard time breathing, and one of the little bells went off, so Allie got up, and my mom had a mask on, and Allie moved her mask just a little bit, and my mom said, Coke. She just wanted a Coke.
A sip of Coke.
And, she's in her dying days. She wants Coke. Let's get her Coke. So Allie got her some Coke. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm laying on the ground, and I'm watching this. And Allie gets her a Coke, and she's drinking it out of a straw. And then Allie pulls it back. And then my mom reaches up and pulls her mask back and says, in broken English, I love you, Allie. Then she put her mask right back on, and those were her last words. And then she died that morning. But not until my little daughter got a chance to be in the presence of her grandmother.
Yeah.
And that was the greatest gift. And so when we were writing this book, I was like, man, my mom, she just was somebody who was fully present. And now, when you got your phones and all this kind of stuff, it's really hard to be fully present. But I never forget, 8 years ago when my mom was fully present, and now my daughter Allie has a story to tell, and I'm telling people this story. And I wish I could tell it without crying. It's just not going to happen.
But it does illustrate the connection. What a beautiful gift for your daughter to hear that from her grandmother.
Yeah.
That does make me cry.
Yeah. And what she taught us was just that you have to fight for presence. Like what Nana taught us was the fight for it. For 4 days, she didn't need to fight. She could have taken the morphine and gone to sleep and been peaceful and not suffered at all. But she actually wrote on a dry erase board, pray that the Lord will give me increased strength to fight. Because that was when she lost her voice and she couldn't even say. But she fought for the presence of her family. And those moments were precious to her. They meant something to her. And she suffered through some of the pain so that we could have her presence and that she could have ours.
And that's exactly what Jesus did on the cross when he was offered that little mix on the sponge and he refused to drink it. It was just a little something that could have numbed the pain. And Jesus was like, I'm going to stay fully present. And I got a chance to see that in real life. And it really makes me thankful that our Savior did that. And he stayed fully present even in the midst of his pain. And you know what? In marriage, sometimes it is painful to give your spouse full presence. But when you do that, it's the greatest gift you can ever give to your spouse. And when they open it, they're going to get a real treasure.
Yeah. You've said it so beautifully, and what a story to land on. That grabs everybody's emotions. And, whether it's your marriage, your parenting, connections with people, this is really good, this resource. And you can apply it in all kinds of ways. But ideally, certainly in your marriage A to Z, 30 days to relational transformation, probably one of the easiest ways to start thinking differently and getting the benefit of thinking differently by loving each other and connecting with each other. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Make a gift of any amount, $5, $10. We'll send you a copy of the book as our way of saying thank you for being part of the ministry. If you can't afford it, we're into helping your marriage. So just let us know. We'll trust others. We'll cover the cost of that, and we'll get it out to you. We're just a big treasure trove of resources. We've got a marriage assessment that'll help you. We have Hope Restored, an intensive 4-day, typically 4-day environment where you can go. We have a post 2-year 80% success rate. We have counselors here at Focus on the Family. You can call, we'll set up a time, you can talk to the counselors. They, in addition to talking with you, will provide you additional resources, maybe even a referral in your area to continue that counseling journey to help you. We have tried to think of every way that we can invest in your marriage together in the name of Christ. And we just need you to take advantage of it.
Help is one phone call away. 800, the letter A in the word family. We'll have the link in the show notes below for you to find all of these resources and so much more. And of course, as Jim said, if you can donate, that's how we offer all of the great resources we have for you. So donate as you can. The link is down below. And if we could, let me just ask you to like this video and share about it with a friend who needs to maybe learn a couple of fine-tuning things or some deeper truths as we've shared today. And on behalf of the team, thanks for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.